The beginning. Sometimes it's hard to know where the beginning begins, even though the end is clear. I know where Julia started, but there are only sketchy reports of his beginnings. Perhaps if we knew what possibilities might emerge from the shadows, we would keep the lights on at all costs, but it would be at the expense of living. She was a beautiful baby, content with the world. Plagued by the pain of reoccurring ear infections, which left her with damaged hearing, and all the loss of language and communication, she never complained. Smiled at her lot and wore the badge of second twin. Her twin sister was bossy, and they learned to fight when they realised for the first time they could both reach for the same object. Forget all that warm and fuzzy talk about the wonder of twins. It's a hard road. It was a childhood full of playgroup and Play-Doh. I breastfed the two of them, propped up on beanbags as recommended by the Nursing Mothers Association. Their father was a seaman, so he didn't spend too much time arranging the beanbags. He did build a beach house where the children were able to roam free and practice their independence. He was the sort of father who took his children to the top of the hill to learn to ride a bike, and then launched them freewheeling downwards to the street at the bottom of the hill. Emma was my firstborn, 5 years older than the twins, old enough to orchestrate concerts and older children into the house. A good big sister. Not involved in their fights, a placid girl who loved to dance and who enjoyed having little sisters. Outside the protection of home, Julia lived in an isolated world, but she had her twin, Katrina, to fight for her inclusion in the playground. Katrina was king of the castle, and Julia grappled with shyness. It allowed her to observe others. Katrina topped the class while Julia struggled to learn 10 spelling words. She learned the humility required to live with learning difficulties. Katrina excelled in the gym. Julia painted ceramics with a group of middle-aged women with whom she chatted, taught her to listen, to enjoy the simple pleasures of interaction with others. We worked together on her speech and occupational therapy exercises each afternoon after school, which was time spent together, so she was always a willing pupil. Without any intellectual impairment, Julia was sensitive to her disabilities, called herself Da, unable to handle the J. Always clumsy, she would laugh at herself, and a crash on the steps would be followed by her cheerful voice proclaiming, "It's okay, it's just Da taking a fall." The baby, Ella, was born when the twins were 10, a perfect age to practice motherhood without the distractions of sex. Ella was, to say the least, an unexpected arrival. But we were all delighted at what life had brought us, and Julia showed the endless patience that was born of her love of children. She had found her voice by the time puberty had extended its slippery fingers into our lives. She matured early, so she was full of thoughts of fashion and boys, while her sister was still busy pulling on the leotard. Katrina did catch up, of course, but by then Julia had established her own identity and a close circle of friends. She was a beautiful-looking girl, but it was her concern for others and her sense of humour that attracted them. Their father built the children a large cage from recycled materials. It housed a collection of birds that I tended in the usual manner of mothers, who always seem to end up feeding the pets. Good training for mothers, I guess, even if the intention is to instill a sense of responsibility into the offspring. Julia hankered after her own bird, one that would sit on her shoulder and respond personally. She arrived home from the markets with the first recruit, who, unfortunately, took advantage of the open cage and bolted for freedom. Another trip to the markets produced another candidate, whom she named Hope. What optimism! She looked so crushed when she returned from school to the empty cage. Hope is dead, she lamented, which made a resounding impression on Ella, who as a 3-year-old would accompany me to Mass on Sunday and actually listen to the sermon. Our parish priest chose that very week to deliver a homily on hope, and the attentive Ella protested that in fact hope is dead, her distinctively childish voice ringing out loudly from the front pew. There were no more birds. Her father is a difficult man. He taught the children to work hard, to exercise hard, and live hard. He was not one for following the rules. My children accepted him with love and accommodated any injustices in his behaviour, accepted the imperfections in human nature, and forgave any of his trespasses. It tempered her resilience to male domination. But after a round-table discussion with my 4 daughters, it was agreed that we would be better off on our own. And so it was that we were free to do as we pleased, and it pleased us to be able to give a home to homeless kids. The lives of other children certainly broadened the girls' view of the world. They willingly made room on the couch and vacated their beds when necessary, and learned how hard life is for so many. Gave them empathy and a real understanding that you do not choose poverty or privilege at birth. Introduced boys into our household, brothers to fill the void in a female household. The girls were of a good age to take in the hard grit of it. Julia learnt the lessons well. She always knew what to say to comfort a new arrival in our household, made each feel valued in a gentle way. We were by now a low-income family, so at 14 Julia was selling fish and chips after school and learning the thrill of a bargain. She was frugal with herself, but was endlessly generous with her friends and family. She would happily eat a Vegemite sandwich and forego the McDonald's. Each year, when the girls were still in primary school, I would do the pilgrimage to the local show, an event that was designed to drain the pockets of adults and delight the children. Julia lined up at all the rides and show bag stands until the year she was given control of her own money. She didn't like to be ripped off, took it as an affront to her intelligence, and she could be amazingly forthright if the situation demanded it. She used to go into bat for me sometimes, fiercely protective. She did spend money on clothes and loved jewellery and always had some special piece on lay-by. Her collection grew over the years and she never lost track of the origin of each piece. Kept the clothes as well. Unable to part with all those bargains, she packed them into suitcases that lived under my spare bed and filled up the shed. When Ella was of an age to show an interest, Julia would arrive from life elsewhere and showed no mercy if she believed Ella had worn her clothes. Symbols, I guess, of her hard work. The travel bug took hold when she headed off to America with a male school friend when she was 15. Saved the money selling fish and chips, not expecting a first-class ticket. She never tired of meeting new people and immersing herself in new situations. She was not a promiscuous girl, which rather set her apart from her peers, who were busy with their early experimentations with sex. It allowed her to cement her friendships and open the lines of communication with the opposite sex. Her male friends always remained fiercely loyal. Her first boyfriend lived with us for quite some time. He had come from difficult circumstances and she understood his disadvantage. They shared a bed, but not a sexual relationship. She said she wasn't ready for sex. He was a volatile character, only 12 months older than her. She was full of teenage insecurities, but they offered each other comfort. He moved on in the impulsive way in which he seemed to conduct his life. The week the twins finished year 12, I sold my house and moved them both into separate flats. They had to visit each other to fight. How they missed the daily battles over hairbrushes, borrowed clothes, household chores, and all the other things they shared. Julia went off to work in a fruit shop, paid her rent, paid her bills, lived a full social life, never once asked for a loan, and in 12 months had accumulated enough money to set sail with Emma for England. She thanked me for giving her that final shove into independence, recognising the risk I'd taken. She loved London. It was full of people. She worked in the canteen of a fashion house in Oxford Street. Not only access to cheap clothes, but also the leftovers, which she would deliver to her collection of homeless people on her homeward journey. I went to London to work, and Ella and I joined the girls, complete with their English boyfriends. We lived in Streatham. Julia loved the rhythm of the streets, besotted by the black faces and the liquid eyes of the children, the Brixton markets dripping with promises of a foreign world. I watched her domestic affairs. She had an expectation that a man must pull his weight, must be aware of his duties as a partner. The Englishman was ready to travel, and they went to New Zealand for a year. Graded apples, which she said allowed her the freedom to meditate all day. Turned 21, Katrina joined her for the occasion from Perth. They celebrated with a hangi cooked by the Maoris from upstairs.